So now I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker, Piquette. She is the Deputy Minister of Environment and Protected Areas for the Government of Alberta, and she's speaking today on behalf of the Minister. Deputy Minister, there she is. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today. The podium is yours.
Thank you for introduction, Jeff, and thank you to everyone for joining us both virtually and in person here for the workshop. As Jeff mentioned, the Honorable Sonia Savage, Minister of Alberta Environment and Protected Areas, sends her regrets as she was very much looking into participation today. I would like to acknowledge the Global Carbon Capture and Storage Institute for teaming up with the Government of Alberta for this wonderful and really large event. So congratulations, Jeff. And I would like to also thank many of my team members at the Environment and Protected Area for their coordination effort and participation today as well. This is an important chance to share learning, barriers, and best practices in getting carbon capture across the finish line. I am pleased to share our government's progress on CCUS and related clean technologies this morning and provide a little bit an update, maybe a mini preview on our climate strategy title is very telling, Emission Reduction and Energy Development Plan. So I'm just going to share, I can resist, it's almost ready. I'm going to share you one of the first introductory sentences, and it's saying something along those lines. Alberta's plan, it's not to cut emission, it's to cut emission and not economic growth. I'm sorry, I knew I'm going to do this. Last fall, Premier Smith tasked Environment and Protected Areas with delivering on a number of items through a mandate letter. They can be publicly found online, but I don't think everyone in this room would come and search for them. But the letter, including number one item on this letter, was to develop a Made in Alberta climate strategy and continue investment in clean technology and innovation. Premier Smith recently continued the momentum of this mandate by writing public letter, some of you must have seen that, inviting the federal government to cooperate and collaborate with Alberta on CCUS investments. Increasing investment in emissions reduction technology like CCUS will help Alberta meet aggressive yet achievable emission reduction in all our industrial sectors. In Alberta, CCUS can support a wide range of sectors from oil and gas, electricity generation, cement, LNG, and most important, also hydrogen. Alberta's government is looking to incorporate CCUS and complementary federal provincial incentives into soon to be released Alberta Emission and Energy Development Plan. Work is currently underway, as I mentioned, it's almost final. And the plan is built around the important principle that clean energy and innovation are required to address climate change. Alberta's approach must continue to be affordable, realistic, and effective, and steps to manage emission must also attract investment in innovation technology and deployment at scale. Alberta looks forward to the potential for the federal provincial minister-led working group for the CCUS incentive program, so we can take the next step in this critical collaboration effort. Collaboration and partnerships are key to advancing clean technologies such as CCUS, which is internationally recognized as a necessary pathway to reduce the carbon footprint of large industrial sectors with hard-to-abate emissions, including hydrogen production. Alberta has the potential to be one of the lowest cost producers of clean hydrogen in the world. And continuing to develop CCUS will help Alberta capitalize on emerging opportunities like clean hydrogen production and use. Alberta is home to world-class natural gas reserves, abundant renewable energy resources, extensive energy infrastructure, and ideal geological storage capacity. Considering these factors, Alberta is leveraging our existing natural resources and playing a leading role in Canada's clean hydrogen economy. This includes developing clean hydrogen hubs and carbon storage hubs across the province to help ensure industries have open access to affordable options to abate or store their emissions. Alberta also offers several investment attractions programs that some of you may be familiar with, like the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program that provides direct financial incentives to attract investment in the province petrochemical sector, including new or expanding hydrogen production facility utilizing CCUS. Alberta's Clean Hydrogen Center of Excellence is supporting CCUS technology development and innovation to reduce emission while supporting an emerging hydrogen economy. And Alberta Hydrogen Roadmap incentivizes CCUS as a key policy pillar to deploy clean, low carbon hydrogen into economy. Natural gas-based hydrogen production with CCUS is considered the most cost-effective strategy in the near term to produce clean hydrogen with large-scale deployment in Alberta. When carbon capture is retrofitted to existing hydrogen production facilities or integrated with next-generation clean hydrogen production, Alberta is well positioned to support the scale-up of the hydrogen economy. That's no doubt that CCUS projects are critical for Canada and the world to meet ambitious greenhouse gas reduction targets, which is why our government continues to make important CCUS investments in many ways, including through design of the Technology, Innovation and Emission Reduction, known as TIER, system, which is our industrial carbon pricing and emission trading system. And a colleague of mine will be on the panel discussing changes to the program. You will hear later in the day about the TIER amendments and enhancements to better support CCUS projects. You will also hear about the TIER fund investment to support clean technology, like specifically CCUS. We need to encourage investment in both alternative energy and emission reduction technology like CCUS to meet the climate goals and energy needs of today and the future. Developing carbon storage hubs, for example, helps diversify the energy sector, and carbon capture technologies provide an important option for sectors that have limited ability to reduce their emissions, including iron, steel, cement, and chemical manufacturing, so variety of different industry. It's worth repeating that Alberta has abundant geological storage capacity, which makes the province one of the best jurisdictions in the world for CCUS. That's why for more than a decade, Alberta has helped advance the commercialization of CCUS technology and is quickly becoming known as a global leader in the space. We selected 25 proposals in 2022 to begin exploring how to develop environmentally safe carbon storage hubs. When fully developed, the hubs will allow operators to safely collect, transport, and permanently store capture CO2 from across the province. We are making sure CO2 storage options are available and accessible to all industries. Along with storage hubs, Alberta Energy Ministry will continue to explore carbon sequestration scenarios, including small scales and remote opportunities in the future. We will continue to work with industry partners like all of you, online and here in person, and keep supporting the rapid adoption of this technology in many different ways. We are constantly working on significant regulatory enhancements and knowledge sharing. In addition, we have various financial supports. We have invested or committed nearly 1.8 billion into CCUS projects. We have many policy and program supports for CCUS in Alberta, and we continue to push the federal government to provide additional support. Carbon capture, it's a priority for Alberta's government, and I would like to thank all of you for the work you are doing to advance this key technology in our province. Sincerely, thank you. I wish you an insightfully productive rest of the workshop. Thank you again for having me today, and I will pass back to Jeff to introduce next speaker. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Kasia. We see a lot of governments around the world seeking to advance CCUS. And I have to say that North America, and I'll include the US here, but certainly Alberta is in the leadership position as far as the commitment that's been made by the government. And the Deputy Minister's presence here this morning is just one piece of that, but probably more importantly has been the commitment that they've made to financial incentives and other ways to advance CCUS that they've made over the past decade and continue to do so. So we'll be hearing more about that as we go forward. I'd now like to, as I said earlier, kind of expand the lens a bit, introduce my colleague, Spencer Schecht, who's a client engagement lead senior client engagement lead at the Institute. Spencer's responsible for building our membership here in Canada. So if you are interested in having membership with the Institute, talk to Spencer afterwards. Without further ado, Spencer Schecht, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Spencer Schecht from the Global Carbon Capture and Storage Institute. I see some folks in the back. We do have some chairs in the front here. So if you're standing around looking for chairs, there's a lot in the front. It's my pleasure to be with you all here today. You've been receiving some emails from me, I'm sure, and I've been working very closely with Shan Pletcher, Fruz Farju, and John Story Bishop to bring yesterday and today together over the last 4+ months. And actually, I believe we can count Shan's cat as an honorary member of the planning team. So please join me in thanking Shan, Afi, and John. We welcome everyone here today, as well as the hundreds of participants online and joining us virtually. So in this talk, we're going to walk through a snapshot of the big picture progress of CCS globally. The slides and information we will see today are from the Institute's Global Status Report 2022. It's now available for download on our website. Before we dive in, let's talk briefly about the Global CCS Institute. We are a nonprofit international climate change think tank. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Houston, Melbourne, London, Brussels, Beijing, Tokyo, and Abu Dhabi. Our mission is narrowly focused, and that is specifically to accelerate the global deployment of CCUS. We are a member-driven organization with over 180 members across national and subnational governments, global corporations, private companies, research bodies, and NGOs, all committed to a net zero future. It is great to be with so many members today. And if you're sitting here thinking, I should be a member, you're right. So come and talk with us. In 2022, the pipeline of operational and under development commercial CCS facilities grew for the 5th year in a row. Today, as of March 2023, there are 32 commercially operating CCS facilities worldwide, with 12 facilities in construction and 189 in development. The capture capacity of CCS in the pipeline is now over 244 million tons per annum. That is a 44% increase from 2021 to 2022. Policy and funding support for CCS continued its momentum, predominantly here in North America, as well as in Europe, while project progress was notable in the Asia-Pacific region. But despite all of this progress, in order to achieve net zero emissions as projected by numerous climate models, CCS capacity must increase by more than 100-fold by 2050. Driving that substantial growth that we're continuing to see across CCS are 3 interrelated factors. First is the demand for greenhouse gas emissions in line with climate science and rising expectations from civil society. Second is the pursuit of lowest cost, most efficient pathways towards net zero from governments and companies pursuing sustainable development. And finally, third, it is the unabated demand for products and services critical to human development, including energy, fertilizers, steel, cement, chemicals, and more. This map illustrates where CCS facilities are presently operating. Globally, today, there are 32 facilities in operation, capturing over 40 million tons of CO2 every year. On this map, we can also see the 4 new facilities that came online in 2022. And here is a map of commercial CCS facilities under construction or under development, illustrating the increased geographic reach and distribution of CCS facilities in the pipeline. In 2022, we saw an additional 61 new CCS facilities added to the project pipeline. And then nearly 40 more were added since we published this data in October. And I can tell you that there's also a backlog, so there's more projects being added nearly weekly. There are now over 25 countries with CCS projects operational or in development. All this to say, our graphics department has a very difficult time keeping up. Now let's touch briefly on storage. While effectively all of the CO2 injected for enhanced oil recovery, EOR, is permanently trapped in the pore space that previously held the oil, the majority of future storage will not be associated with EOR. While most facilities today serve EOR, more than 70% of the commercial CCS projects in development instead aim to use dedicated geologic storage, such as deep saline formations and depleted oil and gas fields. An important trend of the storage analysis is that the average injection rate per project is increasing rapidly across the deployment pipeline. Operational facilities, on average, inject just over 1 megaton per annum. That average could more than double within a decade. Furthermore, many storage sites in development have rates of around 5 megaton per annum, implying capacity for multiple simultaneous injection sites. Our analysis of the CCUS pipeline indicates industries across diverse sectors, a sample of which listed here, are now advancing capture projects. Where for years, CCS has been closely associated with coal, the majority of additions in 2022 in the project pipeline are not associated with coal-fired power generation, and instead offer a selection of critical industries for which demand is expected to grow, while emissions are also then expected to fall. Networks continue to be the predominant model of development as they consolidate shared infrastructure, tap into economies of scale, and they speed overall project deployment and allow for the interconnection of multiple emission sources to transport as well as storage. And we are seeing a notable uptick in dedicated CO2 infrastructure worldwide specific to CCUS, including not only pipelines, but shipping, rail, and trucks. Intercountry CO2 transport is arising as a necessity, and therefore dedicated CO2 carriers and pipelines are increasing in deployment. For example, in February of 2022, the first transport of liquid hydrogen was made from Australia to Japan, proving the concept for further innovation. And here's an interesting tidbit. While China's Qilu Shengli facility awaits for a pipeline to be built, a specialized fleet of 57 trucks is relied upon to transport its captured CO2. Carbon dioxide removal, in particular, direct air capture, or DACs, is of increasing interest to a range of industries with high cost, hard to abate emissions. And over the preceding 2 years, we have seen a flush of interest in the DAC space from governments as well as the finance industry. And we've also noted first of their kind project announcements. DACs has the benefit of not being limited by scale nor geography, and the security and permanence of geologic storage is vastly superior to storage in biomass or soil. Although the cost of DACs is relatively high today, if the cost of DACs can be reduced below around $200 per ton US of CO2, the total global cost of achieving net zero by mid-century will be reduced by more than $1 trillion US. And the scale and deployment of DACs is directly related to its cost, which is why we, as the Institute, advocate that governments should actively incentivize DACs projects, and support R&D, because that return on investment is potentially enormous. BECCS, bioenergy with CCS, also has a significant role as it provides both energy and CO2 removal. Carbon dioxide removal and point source CCS are complementary rather than competitive, but both require significant investment in pursuit of net zero by mid-century. We note that public investment compounded by private financing is key to incentivizing CCS at scale. Lots of money is flowing into the space. New CCS-specific funding from governments, a growing interest among private financiers, as well as a growing interest in leveraging carbon markets is helping drive consistency and convergence. Environment, social, and governance, ESG considerations are driving scrutiny of companies' emissions, scrutiny of their net zero plans, and scrutiny of the pathways towards which they will proceed there. Let's move to a flyover of regional CCS developments. We're going to have to keep things fairly general, but if you'd like, if you'd like to learn more about individual countries or regions, head over to our website and download the Global Status Report. As of the end of 2022, in the United States, there were 13 facilities in operation, 2 in construction, over 70 in development, and another 20 plus projects were announced. There are numerous reasons for this, but a primary reason is sustained policy support. And that support continues with numerous new game-changing policies enacted over the last 12 months. Of course, the one thing that everyone in the United States was waiting for was the potential for 45Q enhancements. And against all odds, and I mean that, against all odds, those 45Q enhancements were passed into law in August of last year, and it's worth highlighting some of them here. Multi-year extension of the commenced construction window from 2026 to 2033. And projects will receive direct pay for the first 5 years. The law increases 45Q credit values. It's now $85 per metric ton for CO2 stored in geologic formations, $60 for utilization, $60 for EOR, and $180 for direct air capture with permanent geologic storage. Also, these credit values are fixed until 2026 and then indexed to inflation after that. The law also dramatically lowers capture thresholds for facilities to be able to qualify for these incentives. Further, $12 billion has been earmarked through the infrastructure law for CCUS projects over the next 5 years. The CHIPS Act has allocated $1 billion towards carbon removal R&D. And there is a new catalytic alignment across government agencies, creating congruent efforts, educating stakeholders, and providing the certainty of a durable business case that is driving CCS deployment. And you can read more about all of this in our Global Status Report. From our work internationally, it is safe to say that the US is now the CCS envy of the world. And this is driving other nations to enact similar incentives to catalyze their own carbon management industries. We have this very pretty slide here about Canadian CCUS policy. And being here in Calgary, we had to share it. But to be fair, we're going to hear a lot about Canada. So forgive the brevity here. Of note, it's important to mention the forthcoming, the federal government's 2033 emissions reduction plan, the forthcoming CCUS strategy, the CCUS investment tax credits, and of course, over the next 7 or so hours, we're going to learn a great deal about Alberta's specific CCUS policies, incentives, and key players. Heading across the pond, 2022 was another year of substantial increases in projects in development across the European continent. Europe added 1 new operating facility, and that was the Orca facility, which is a direct air capture project in Iceland. The close of 2022 showed more than 70 commercial projects underway, nearly doubling that total from 2021. The Landscape project in Norway continues to advance, with the capture facility at the Brevik cement plant under construction, and the Northern Lights storage facility off the west coast of Norway is preparing to receive CO2 from multiple sources. Supportive government policy, underpinned by the European Commission's target of climate neutrality by 2050, is driving investment in CCUS. The European Union's Innovation Fund is investing in 11 CCUS projects. The funding is supplemented by country-level incentive programs. Some of note are listed here. And where can you read more? That's right, the Global Status Report. Last year, the UK announced 2 CCS clusters after developing their billion-pound CCS infrastructure fund in 2020, and 20 more projects are under review. The United Kingdom government aims to capture and store between 20 and 30 megaton per annum of CO2 across 4 networks by 2030. The Middle East and North Africa region remains the world's largest oil exporter, and it's seeking to maintain those energy exports, including hydrogen, in the future. There are 3 facilities operating in this region, but looking forward, this region has the potential for significant further CCUS deployment. It has large geologic storage resources, oil, gas, and petrochemical expertise, and importantly, the recognition by national governments of the role of CCUS in emissions mitigation. Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have all included CCUS in their nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement, and their national interests are well served by technologies such as CCUS that can reduce emissions from the production as well as use of fossil fuels. Both governments and the private sector see the changing expectations of their international customers, both for their conventional petroleum products and the potential for this region to become a leading global supplier of low-carbon hydrogen. Voluntary carbon markets are emerging in this region, and further, COP27 last year in Egypt and COP28 upcoming in the United Arab Emirates is expected to focus clean energy deployment, CCUS included. Moving now to the Asia-Pacific region, there is a lot of activity here on the policy, regulatory, and project fronts. CCUS is of increasing interest over the last 2 years in China. China has, for the first time, included CCS in its national 5-year plan and other carbon neutral policy documents. Its first megaton scale project has completed construction, and the construction last year began on a 1.5 megaton per annum CCUS facility on a coal-fired power plant. Both of these projects are being run by state-owned enterprises. And while SOEs are driving early advances in CCS, more policy support will be required to bring CCUS to scale in the coming years. Japan continues to drive regional collaboration by necessity, since the country has very limited CO2 storage capacity of its own. Its draft CCS roadmap reflects the goal to capture up to 240 million tons of CO2 by mid-century. Japan is working with other APAC countries on bilateral and multilateral agreements to make CCUS ambitions a reality. Both Singapore and Indonesia are leaning into the network and bilateral approach due to poor storage capacity, as well as a strategy to bolster internal technological capacity. Malaysia is seeking to become a regional hub for CO2 storage. They have a couple of large offshore CCUS projects in development, and regulations and policy are advancing in parallel. Australia and Thailand are advancing projects slated to come online in the next 3 to 4 years, and Cambodia and Vietnam are taking their first actions towards building out CCS roadmaps. The hub approach will be critical to CCS deployment in the APAC region in order to knit together clusters of emissions with high-capacity geologic storage. Excuse me. So look at the bigger picture and take a step back. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change continues to highlight the importance of CCS, producing analyses that demonstrate the technology is necessary, effective, and viable. 21 countries now include CCS in their nationally determined contributions, and the vast majority of those countries who submitted long-term low emissions development strategies also include CCS. Transboundary CCS activities are steadily gaining ground, and we expect that trend to continue in the coming years. With over 200 CCS projects in the project pipeline in 26 countries, it's clear that governments, the private sector, and the scientific community around the world see CCS as an essential tool to address climate change. But despite that progress, we have a long way to go. CCS capacity will need to increase by more than 100 times by 2050 to meet climate targets. This will require durable commitment and increasing investment from governments, corporations, technology developers, service providers, and financiers to get CCS deployed at scale and enable it to achieve its full potential to abate climate change. It has been my pleasure to address you all today. It has been a cocktail of pleasure and anxiety to see this workshop grow from an idea to this room of 250 people. Thank you all so much for spending the day with us. Please go to our website to download the Global Status Report and myriad other free-to-access CCS publications. Feel free to connect with me, my colleagues here today, or through our emails or LinkedIn. And stick around for our first panel, Alberta's CCUS operating model, featuring Whitecap, the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line, enhanced and moderated by GCCSI's own Jessica Oglesby. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.